There are feelings that arise silently, almost inexplicably. You think you've already moved on, that it's all behind you, but suddenly it returns to your mind. A scent, a song, a dream, and there it is again, the absent presence that insists on remaining. And the most unsettling thing is not understanding why. Why miss someone who's already gone, who perhaps never really was all that? Analytical psychology, developed by Carl Jung, offers profound paths to understand this kind of inexplicable void, and reveals that very often it's not the person we miss, but something much more intimate and essential. Today we will descend to the invisible roots of this feeling, where the unconscious whispers what consciousness cannot explain. If this topic resonates with you, write in the comments, "I'm ready to understand what I'm truly feeling." According to Carl Jung, feelings that seem to arise without explanation are not the product of chance, but signals of the unconscious seeking expression. When we miss someone without knowing why, we may be projecting onto that person parts of ourselves that have not yet been integrated. Jung called this projection, a psychic mechanism by which we attribute to the other aspects of ourselves that we don't recognize or refuse to accept. The image of that person can act as a symbolic mirror, reflecting desires, traits, or needs that were hidden in our unconscious. That lingering absence may also be related to the shadow, a central concept in Jungian psychology. The shadow is everything we reject in ourselves, everything that has been repressed because it didn't fit social or personal expectations. When someone embodies part of that shadow, whether it's emotional intensity, freedom, confidence, or even vulnerability, they become unforgettable not for who they are, but for what they reveal about us. Jung also spoke of the journey of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of our being. When someone awakens in us a persistent feeling of longing or emotional confusion, it may be that this person symbolized an important stage in that process, such as the activation of our animus for women or anima for men, the inner representations of masculinity and femininity that must be recognized for us to evolve. Missing someone then can be an invitation from the unconscious to look within and ask ourselves, what exactly am I seeking through this absence? And by answering honestly, we can approach what Jung considered true freedom, self-knowledge. Missing someone without knowing exactly why is an experience that defies logic and often confuses heart and mind. Yet from the perspective of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this feeling has roots much deeper than we imagine. It frequently isn't tied to the person itself, but to what they symbolized within us. And this is where projection comes in. For Jung, projection is a psychic mechanism that occurs when unconscious aspects of our psyche are cast onto another. This means that many times, what we see and feel for a person isn't really about them, but about parts of ourselves we recognize in them. These unconscious contents, desires, fears, latent qualities, or repressed traits, are projected because they haven't yet been acknowledged as belonging to us. Imagine, for instance, that someone displays spontaneity, freedom, and an intense way of living that you secretly admire but have never allowed yourself to express. That person then becomes a living symbol of everything dormant within you. When they leave your life, what you lose isn't just the relationship but the reflection of what you still haven't accessed in yourself. The longing that remains is often for that internal reflection. This process is unconscious, which explains why many people feel longing without being able to name exactly what or whom they miss. It's not merely a lack of company, routine, or romantic love. It's the loss of an emotional symbolic mirror that made direct contact with deep unconscious contents. The person ends up representing, even unintentionally, a bridge to parts of ourselves forgotten, denied, or undeveloped. Another relevant factor in projection is idealization. When we project, we don't see the other as they truly are, but as our psyche needs them to be. This creates an intense psychic bond, where the other's absence triggers an internal collapse of everything they symbolized. The breakup then hurts not only because of the loss of affection, but because the projection has been shattered. It's as if the mirror were suddenly removed, leaving us without direct access to what we long to integrate. Many people wonder why they keep thinking about someone who hurt them, who was indifferent, or who never truly committed. The Jungian answer again lies in projection. The pain and insistence don't stem from the person themselves, but from the psychic importance they assumed. They may have embodied an archetype, a powerful image from the collective unconscious, like the lover, the hero, the caretaker, or the rebel. Losing that external figure feels like losing a piece of the soul, That's why longing can come unannounced in random moments with disproportionate force. It isn't just memory, it's a symbolic activation of something unconscious still pulsing within us, and the less conscious we are of what we're projecting, the more power that longing holds over our emotional life. This explains why many people stay trapped for years in relationships that ended long ago or never truly began. The bond is psychic, not rational. The path to begin dissolving this kind of longing isn't to deny the feeling, but to bring it into consciousness. Asking ourselves, what did that person symbolize for me, or which part of myself did they help me access, is an act of courage and lucidity. When we recognize the projection, we have the chance to withdraw the other's power and start reintegrating what, in truth, belongs to us. What seemed like missing someone may actually be a deep call to look within and reconnect. There is a type of absence that goes beyond romantic longing or nostalgia for past moments. It's a void that resonates in the deepest layers of the psyche, as if something essential were ripped away. For Jungian psychology, this feeling can be directly linked to the shadow, the set of personality aspects we repress, ignore, or reject over a lifetime. According to Carl Jung, the shadow isn't just the sum of our faults or negative traits. It includes everything that, not fitting the conscious self-image we hold, was pushed into the unconscious. This may include both characteristics we deem unacceptable, anger, jealousy, desire for control, and repressed positive qualities, courage, sensuality, assertiveness. The shadow isn't good or bad. It's simply what's outside the light of consciousness. When we encounter someone who somehow activates our shadow, they become extraordinarily significant. That's because they touch parts of us that are asleep. They may live boldly what we always repressed, or freely express emotions we learned to hide. They may provoke, challenge, or unsettle us, and that's exactly why they become unforgettable. Their presence not only attracts or involves us, but confronts us. That confrontation can be uncomfortable. At times we feel anger, fear, admiration, or confusion toward that person, but those intense emotions signal that they're activating shadow contents. Not necessarily because they themselves are shadowy, but because they touch our hidden zones. So when that person departs or disappears, the void we feel isn't merely emotional, it's existential. It's as if we lost the chance to access something vital within ourselves. In many cases, that person appears at a specific moment of transition when we're about to change, grow, or break patterns. They act as a catalyst. By activating our shadow, they push our psyche towards self-knowledge. But if we aren't ready or aware of that process, we tend to react with attachment or suffering. Their absence, then, becomes a psychic hole, not because they were the one, but because they touched a wound or potential we still don't know how to tend to alone. The shadow can also manifest in relationships through inverted idealization. Just as we project light onto the other, we can project shadow, seeing in them everything we detest or fear. Interestingly, these figures who elicit aversion or discomfort can be as memorable as those we love. Sometimes we even miss those people, not from affectionate longing, but because their presence mobilized parts of us still demanding attention. The key here is integration. When we recognize that the person who left activated aspects of our shadow, we open the door to reintegration of those contents. The void then ceases to be a nameless hole and becomes fertile ground for inner growth. We begin to realize that what we sought outside can and must be reclaimed within. Absence transforms into a mirror, and the mirror into a path. This doesn't mean we should ignore the feeling or rationalize the pain. Far from it. We need to feel, welcome, and acknowledge it. But it's equally important not to lose ourselves in the illusion that only the other can restore what we feel was taken. The absence of that person is often an invitation from the unconscious to embark on a shadow reintegration journey, and that journey demands courage, patience, and presence with oneself. When we understand that what we lost wasn't just the other, but symbolic access to a forgotten part of ourselves, we begin to rebuild the most important bond of all, the one with our own soul. There are loves that pass through us as if they were dreams. Even brief, they leave marks time cannot erase. Even confusing, they endure as though they revealed something sacred, and even if the relationship wasn't deep in concrete reality, something within us insists on returning to that figure, that energy, that presence. This kind of emotional attachment often has less to do with the other person and more to do with what they represented within us. Carl Jung offers a powerful path to understand this bond through the archetypes of animus and anima. According to Jung, we all carry an internal psychic polarity. In men, there exists the archetypal image of the feminine, the anima. In women, the archetypal image of the masculine, the animus. These figures are not merely cultural images, but deep symbolic structures formed by collective and personal experiences that shape how we relate to the opposite sex, to love, and to desire. When we meet someone who approaches the internal image of our animus or anima, the effect is immediate and powerful. We don't fall in love only with the person, but with what they awaken within us. A feeling of wholeness, of archetypal recognition, as if that figure were the embodiment of something we've always sought. That person becomes, unconsciously, the ideal of love, partnership, and spiritual communion. They activate something ancestral in our psyche, and that's why the connection is so deep. However, this activation can create a specific kind of attachment. The other becomes a channel to access dimensions of ourselves that were dormant. They seem to open internal doors we never knew existed. They can make us feel more alive, more whole, more authentic. And when this figure goes away, we feel not only the loss of the relationship, but the sudden closing of that inner connection. The resulting void is not just emotional, it's symbolic, psychic, mythic. Jung observed that the encounter with the projected animus or anima in another is both a blessing and a challenge. It's an opportunity for growth because it confronts us with essential aspects of our inner being, but it's also dangerous because we easily confuse the real person with the internal figure. The pain of loss in these cases is amplified by the disintegration of the idealized image. We don't lose just someone, we lose a symbol of completeness. This helps explain why many people suffer disproportionately after the end of relationships that, objectively, were neither deep nor long-lasting. When the other is confused with the animus or anima, their psychic impact is immense. The conscious mind may not understand, but the unconscious recognizes in that being something far greater than their personality, a mirror of the divine, of the erotic, of the mysterious. It's common in these cases to feel that no one else will ever be like them, or I'll never feel that way again. This experience is real, not because that person was one of a kind in the world, but because what they activated was unique in your history. They connected you to a profound place where love isn't just a feeling, but a symbol of transformation. The good news is that the animus and anima need not remain projected. True growth, according to Jung, happens when we withdraw these images from the other and reintegrate them within ourselves. When a woman begins to develop her animus, her inner voice, her strength, her clarity, she becomes less dependent on an external male figure to feel complete. Likewise, when a man starts to integrate his anima, his sensitivity, intuition, and capacity for surrender, he stops seeking in the external feminine the salvation of his soul. This process doesn't eliminate love, but transforms it. The longing for the figure who left gives way to recognition of what they brought to light. The other ceases to be a destination and becomes a messenger, a living symbol that we're ready to carry inside what we once only saw outside. When we miss someone persistently, even without understanding exactly why, there's a natural tendency to seek answers in the other, in unspoken words, ambiguous actions, unrealized possibilities. But Jungian psychology invites us to shift that focus inward. Instead of looking for explanations outside, we should look within. Absence can be the beginning of an inner journey, and pain the sign that something in us is ready to emerge. This journey is individuation. For Jung, individuation is the essential purpose of psychic life, to become who we truly are by unifying all parts of our personality, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, masculine and feminine. It's not a final destination, but a continuous journey of integration and self-discovery. And often that journey begins precisely in the moments when we feel most lost, shattered, or emotionally vulnerable. The longing we feel for the other may actually be an echo of the longing we feel for ourselves. It's common for certain encounters to awaken intense emotions in us and make us access forgotten or repressed parts. When those figures leave, they leave a trail of silence, of emptiness. But that void can be creative, not destructive. It can become a symbolic womb from which new versions of ourselves can be born, provided we have the courage to cross it. And the individuation process begins when we decide to use longing as a mirror, sincerely asking, what is this absence trying to teach me about myself? This inner movement demands willingness to confront what's hidden. The sadness we feel may contain clues about desires we've ignored. Anger may reveal boundaries we never learned to set. Confusion may point to the disconnect between who we are and who we show the world. When we listen to these emotions without judgment, they cease to be obstacles and become allies in the self-discovery journey. Jung asserted that what remains unconscious returns as fate. In other words, what we ignore within ourselves ends up repeating in external situations, in relationships, losses, or obsessions. Recurring longing for someone may signal that an important part of the psyche is trying to emerge. If we keep returning to the same image, the same memory, it may be because we haven't yet understood what it represents in our maturation process. True self-knowledge doesn't happen only through mental insights, but through symbolic experience. That means we must learn to view our feelings as expressions of something deeper, not as weaknesses to be quickly overcome. When we manage this, the pain of absence turns into a rite of passage. Mourning the loss becomes a crossing toward reconnection with ourselves. Individuation also teaches us to abandon the notion that the other completes us. Jung didn't deny the value of relationships, but he emphasized that true completeness can only be achieved internally. As long as we wait for someone to give us what we haven't yet discovered in ourselves, we remain subject to emotional dependency. But when we realize that what we seek in the other can and must be cultivated within, longing dissolves and gives way to presence. It is at this point that absence becomes a seed. When understood, longing becomes a bridge. The feeling that once paralyzed now points the way, and thus we discover that we are not trapped by the past, but called toward the future, a more authentic, more whole, more conscious future. The one we miss may have been symbolically the messenger of that call. Individuation is therefore the act of gathering the fragments that the other awakened and making them part of our being. It's to stop seeking outside what already exists in potential within. It's to transform pain into direction and absence into presence. Because in the end, the true reunion isn't with the one who left, but with who we are becoming. Missing someone without understanding why isn't a sign of weakness, but a profound invitation from the soul. Throughout this journey, we've seen how longing can be more than memory. It's often a mirror of the psyche. Through the concepts of projection, shadow, the archetypes of animus and anima, and the journey of individuation, it becomes clear that the one who left may have revealed forgotten fragments of who we are. The absence that seemed inexplicable actually carries meaning. It points to internal parts that wish to be seen, welcomed, and integrated. By understanding this, the pain of loss transforms into a path of self-discovery. What seemed like an end can reveal itself as the beginning of an essential reunion, the reunion with one's own soul. It's not about forgetting who departed, but recovering within oneself what he or she awakened. Thus, emptiness ceases to consume and begins to build. If this reflection touched you in some way, subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone who also needs to transform absence into inner strength. And don't forget to watch the video on the screen now. It may be the next step on your journey of transformation.